When people hear the name Mick Jagger, they usually think of the loud, wild, and exciting leader of the Rolling Stones. With his crazy dance moves and powerful voice, he ruled the stage and helped shape rock music. But while he was rocking the world, other bands started to rise, and Mick didn't like all of them. Some he just didn't understand, and others he flat out disliked. In this video, we're breaking it all down. These are the top 5 bands Mick Jagger couldn't stand. Oasis. Let's face it, Mick Jagger has earned the right to speak his mind. As the legendary frontman of the Rolling Stones, he didn't just help define rock and roll, he helped build it. With decades at the top, Jagger stands as a towering figure in music, and from that position, he's never been shy about calling it like he sees it. In fact, he's made a bit of a habit out of it. Whether it was in his early days or later years, Jagger has often focused less on promoting his own work and more on commenting, sometimes harshly, on the careers of others. And he's not alone. His bandmate Keith Richards has thrown his fair share of verbal punches too, making bold criticism almost a Rolling Stones tradition. Of course, not all of Jagger's takes have been scathing. He's praised icons like Prince, David Bowie, and even modern rock acts like The Strokes. At one point he even said, "It's gratifying that people are realizing rock and roll is still vibrant." For Jagger, that's about as warm as it gets. But what if he doesn't like an artist? He makes it crystal clear. And one genre that Jagger just couldn't seem to get behind? Britpop. Despite its heavy nods to 60s rock and roll, the movement never won Jagger over. Especially not Oasis, the loudest voice of the Britpop generation. While millions praised their music, Mick had a different opinion. He flat out thought their live performances just didn't live up to the hype. There was no escaping Oasis in Britain during the 1990s. They weren't just popular, they were a cultural force. But while fans embraced the Gallagher brothers as the new face of British rock, many of the genre's elder statesmen weren't impressed. In fact, some responded with open disdain. Even the Beatles, the very band Oasis idolized, took shots at them. George Harrison didn't hold back, once saying, "The music lacks depth, and the singer Liam is a pain. The rest of the band don't need him." Paul McCartney was just as blunt, calling them derivative and claiming, "They think too much of themselves. They mean nothing to me." As for Jagger, his issue wasn't so much with their attitude or their music, it was their stage presence that left him unimpressed. For someone like Jagger, whose performances were all fire and motion, Liam Gallagher's stone-faced stance behind the mic felt all wrong. Jagger believed that a frontman should be the engine of the show, wild, electric, and constantly in motion. And to him, Liam just stood there, letting the music do the work. That didn't sit well with Mick. In his view, rock and roll isn't just about sound, it's about spectacle. And Oasis, for all their swagger, failed to deliver that on stage. But Jagger's frustration with Oasis didn't stop at Liam Gallagher's stage stillness. In a 2010 interview with Absolute Radio, he took the comparison even further, pointing to Kings of Leon as a band that got it right. According to Jagger, it was their explosive live performances that catapulted them to arena-level success, something he felt Oasis never mastered. But Jagger's criticism didn't start in the 2000s. It went all the way back to Oasis's prime. In the late 90s, when the band released their third album, Be Here Now, Jagger didn't hold back. "You can't dance to it," he said bluntly. "The new album's impossible." For Jagger, who built a legacy on music that made people move, that was the final nail. In his eyes, Oasis might have had attitude, anthems, and arena crowds, but without energy, without showmanship, they were missing the very soul of rock and roll. In the end, this was the stumbling block that kept Mick Jagger from ever truly appreciating Oasis. For him, it's a golden rule. A frontman should be a force of energy, a fire starter on stage. And in Jagger's eyes, that's exactly where Liam Gallagher fell short. Of course, Liam probably couldn't care less. Back then, his swagger and vocals captivated fans across the world. And today, he's still packing out stadiums as a solo artist, inspiring a new generation of teens to throw on parkas, tilt their heads, and try to channel a bit of that Gallagher grit. Love them or hate them, Oasis left a massive mark. Formed in Manchester in 1991, the band rose from the remnants of a group called The Rain. It started with Liam Gallagher on vocals, joined by Paul Arthurs, Paul McGuigan, and Tony McCarroll. When Liam's older brother Noel came on board as lead guitarist and songwriter, the classic Oasis lineup was born. Through lineup changes, Britpop rivalries, and explosive albums, the Gallagher brothers were the heart of the band, right up until the bitter end. In 2009, just moments before they were set to perform in Paris, a final bust-up ended the Oasis era for good. And while Mick Jagger may never have been a fan, millions were, and still are. Next on the list of bands that rubbed Mick Jagger the wrong way, New York Dolls. While the Dolls helped pioneer the raw, rebellious edge of punk rock, Jagger wasn't buying it. He reportedly dismissed them outright as a bunch of crap, a sharp jab that left no room for ambiguity. His issue? He thought they were all flash and no substance. To Jagger, it seemed like the Dolls were more interested in image than in actual musicality. With their outfits, high heels, heavy makeup, and chaotic stage presence, the Dolls carved out a space in New York's underground scene that was as visual as it was sonic. But for someone like Jagger, who prized both spectacle and sound, they just didn't quite hit the mark. Sylvain Sylvain, the band's guitarist, once speculated that Jagger simply didn't take them seriously. He believed Jagger saw them as lacking talent or real musicianship. There might have also been some quiet tension behind the scenes. Jagger, already a global icon, watching this ragtag group of glam punks rise up with a sound and aesthetic far removed from the Stones' refined, blues-infused rock. The Dolls' unapologetically niche, rebellious approach clashed hard with Jagger's vision of rock stardom. Still, their influence can't be denied. Formed in New York City in 1971, the New York Dolls, alongside bands like the Velvet Underground and the Stooges, were a cornerstone of the early punk scene. Though they never achieved massive commercial success, albums like New York Dolls and Too Much Too Soon became cult classics. The band would reunite years later to release 3 more albums and tour with acts like Alice Cooper. But by 2011, the band had disbanded for good. Today, all of the original members have passed on, leaving behind a legacy of rebellion, chaos, and glam. But truly understand Jagger's distaste for the New York Dolls, it helps to look at where the band came from and why they ruffled so many feathers in the rock world. It all started in 1967, when Sylvain Sylvain and Billy Murcia, 2 friends from junior high in New York, began playing in a band called The Pox. When that band dissolved, they briefly pivoted into fashion, launching a clothing business called Truth and Soul. Sylvain also worked at a boutique called A Different Drummer, located right across from a doll repair shop, the New York Doll Hospital. That quirky storefront would eventually inspire the band's unforgettable name. By 1970, Sylvain and Murcia regrouped musically, this time with Johnny Thunders on bass, though Sylvain ended up teaching him guitar. After some lineup shuffles, the band evolved into what would become the New York Dolls. Their first ever gig was on Christmas Eve 1971. Not at a nightclub or a radio station showcase, but at a homeless shelter in the Endicott Hotel. Talk about an unconventional start. Their journey wasn't without tragedy. In 1972, during a short tour of England, Murcia attended a party where he overdosed. Attempts to revive him with coffee and a cold bath only worsened the situation, and he tragically died at just 21 years old. It was a devastating blow to the young band, but they pressed on, recruiting Jerry Nolan on drums and moving forward with David Johansen as frontman. Despite their scrappy resilience, mainstream audiences didn't quite know what to make of them. Produced by Todd Rundgren, their self-titled debut album in 1973 was met with split reactions. Some hailed it as groundbreaking, others compared their guitar work to the sound of lawnmowers. In a Cream magazine poll, the band was voted both Best and Worst New Group of the Year, a perfect summary of their divisive appeal. On UK television, they were famously mocked by Old Grey Whistle test host Bob Harris, who labeled them mock rock and claimed they were a poor imitation of, you guessed it, the Rolling Stones. That comment likely didn't help smooth things over with Jagger. The Dolls were loud, chaotic, and unapologetically flamboyant, and that's exactly why they never sat right with Mick Jagger. While he respected rebellion in rock, he wanted it to come with polish, purpose, and musical depth. To him, the Dolls felt like a parody, not pioneers. And yet, history remembers them differently. Though they never reached the Stones' level of success, the New York Dolls helped spark the flame of punk and influenced generations of musicians who didn't fit the mold. Aerosmith. Of all the rock legends Jagger has tangled with, his jabs at Steven Tyler and Aerosmith might be the most biting. Unlike his criticisms of Oasis or the New York Dolls, where he at least acknowledged some artistry, Jagger seemed almost offended by Aerosmith's very existence. The tension began around 1975 when Aerosmith released their breakout album Toys in the Attic, featuring mega hits like Walk This Way and Sweet Emotion. The band was on fire, but instead of admiration, Mick Jagger saw imitation. In a 1977 interview, Jagger took a direct shot at Tyler. "Here, what are you playing at? Fucking impersonating me." It wasn't just the sound or the swagger, it was the entire persona. Jagger believed Tyler was mimicking his moves, his vocal style, and even his stage presence. While he did begrudgingly admit that Tyler was a sweetheart and quite a nice guy, it came off as more patronizing than sincere. "He's such a little sweetheart, really? What can you do with him? Punch him in the mouth?" The band as a whole didn't fare any better. Jagger didn't mince words when he called the band absolute rubbish. That kind of dismissal from someone as iconic as Jagger wasn't easy to brush off. In later years, Steven Tyler admitted that being constantly compared to the Rolling Stones hurt. While Tyler has embraced many of his influences, the implication that Aerosmith were nothing more than knockoffs clearly stung. Thankfully, time and success softened the blow. Aerosmith went on to become one of the most enduring rock bands of their era, eventually earning Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction in 2001. The Rolling Stones had received theirs in 1989, but by then, the supposed copycats had long proven their own worth. In a 2013 interview with Rolling Stone, Aerosmith's toxic twins, Steven Tyler and Joe Perry, opened up about a topic that had been a consistent source of criticism throughout their career: the comparisons to the Rolling Stones. For Tyler, the comparisons to Mick Jagger were an unavoidable and constant jab from critics. As he candidly admitted, "We've always just played our music and haven't given a shit." Still, the cheap imitation of the Rolling Stones criticism was constant, and it hurt for the first couple of years. Tyler went on to explain that being compared to Jagger was the easiest criticism to throw at him early on. It was constantly Mick Jagger this and Mick Jagger that I copied him, and Janis Joplin too. Mick was the cheapest, easiest shot. Well, he looks like him, so let's write about that. It's clear that for Tyler, these comparisons were more than just critiques. They were a source of frustration. However, Joe Perry, his longtime bandmate, dismissed the idea that Aerosmith had anything in common musically with the Rolling Stones. "You could tell that they weren't listening because we definitely weren't sounding like the Stones." Perry didn't stop there, though. He admitted that while the band had their own distinct sound, they had absolutely been influenced by the rock legends before them, acknowledging the impact of past bands. We steal from everybody. Amateurs copy and pros steal, and we're professionals. We make no bones about the fact that we took from the people that came before us. So, while Aerosmith may have felt stung by the comparisons early on, Tyler and Perry both made it clear. They weren't trying to be a Rolling Stones clone. They were forging their own path, albeit one influenced by the greats that came before them. Aerosmith was formed in Boston in 1970. The group consists of lead vocalist Steven Tyler, bassist Tom Hamilton, drummer Joey Kramer, and guitarists Joe Perry and Brad Whitford. Known for their blues-based hard rock roots, their music also blends elements of pop rock, heavy metal, glam metal, and rhythm and blues, influencing many subsequent rock artists. Aerosmith earned the nickname the Bad Boys from Boston and has often been hailed as America's greatest rock and roll band. The band's primary songwriting duo of Tyler and Perry, often referred to as the Toxic Twins, have crafted some of rock's most enduring songs. Perry and Hamilton originally played together in a band called the Jam Band, where they met Tyler, Kramer, and guitarist Ray Tabano. After Tabano's departure in 1971, Brad Whitford replaced him, solidifying the classic lineup. Their eponymous debut album in 1973 was followed by Get Your Wings in 1974, both of which helped establish their sound. Aerosmith broke into the mainstream in 1975 with the release of Toys in the Attic, followed by Rocks in 1976. These albums marked the band as one of the leading forces in rock music. Hits like Sweet Emotion, Dream On, and Walk This Way helped them gain massive popularity. Throughout the 1970s, Aerosmith toured extensively and became one of the most successful hard rock acts in the world, building a loyal fan base known as the Blue Army. However, the band faced internal struggles, notably drug addiction and conflicts between members, which led to the departures of Perry and Whitford in 1979 and 1981, respectively. The album Rock in a Hard Place failed to capture the same success as their earlier releases, further straining their momentum. Despite these setbacks, Perry and Whitford returned to the band in 1984. Their comeback tour reignited their career, leading to the release of Done with Mirrors. While it didn't meet commercial expectations, it paved the way for a game-changing collaboration. In 1986, the band teamed up with Run DMC to remix their classic hit Walk This Way, introducing Aerosmith to a new generation. The collaboration helped launch the multi-platinum album Permanent Vacation, marking their full return to the mainstream. This was just the beginning of Aerosmith's reinvention, paving the way for even greater success in the decades that followed. Aerosmith's resurgence in the late 1980s and 1990s marked a remarkable period in the band's history. They released multi-platinum albums like Pump, Get a Grip, and 9 Lives, all of which earned the band numerous awards and cemented their place as one of the biggest rock acts of the era. Their hit singles during this time include classics like Dude, Looks Like a Lady, Angel, Ragdoll, Love in an Elevator, Janie's Got a Gun, What It Takes, Livin' on the Edge, Cryin', and Crazy. These tracks became staples of 1990s rock radio, and the band's music videos were highly popular, as were their appearances in television, film, and video games. In 1998, Aerosmith achieved their first #1 hit with I Don't Want to Miss a Thing from the blockbuster movie Armageddon, which helped solidify their comeback. The following year, their roller coaster attraction at Walt Disney World was opened, further marking their iconic status in American pop culture. Aerosmith's comeback has been described as one of the most spectacular in rock history, with the band's success being a testament to their resilience and enduring appeal. Following this period, they released albums such as Just Push Play, which included the hit Jaded, and Honkin' on Bobo, 2004, a collection of blues covers. In 2012, they released Music from Another Dimension. In 2008, the band also released Guitar Hero, Aerosmith, a band-centric video game that became the best-selling game in its category. From 2019 to 2022, Aerosmith had a concert residency in Las Vegas, though it was interrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. After Tyler's vocal injury in 2023 during their farewell tour, the band announced their retirement from touring in 2024. Aerosmith remains the best-selling American hard rock band of all time, having sold over 150 million records worldwide, including 85 million in the United States. They hold the record for the most total certifications by an American group, with 25 gold, 18 platinum, and 12 multi-platinum albums. The band has had 21 top 40 hits on the US Hot 100, 9 #1 mainstream rock hits, and has earned 4 Grammy Awards, 6 American Music Awards, and 10 MTV Video Music Awards. In 2001, Aerosmith were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they were ranked among the greatest artists of all time by both Rolling Stone and VH1. In 2013, Tyler and Perry were inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and in 2020, the band received the MusiCares Person of the Year award, further solidifying their legacy in rock music. Sex Pistols. In December 1977, the Rolling Stones were at the peak of their influence, still reigning as one of rock's most iconic bands. At the same time, a new force was emerging in the UK, the Sex Pistols. Representing a rebellious, raw edge to rock and roll, the Pistols, led by Johnny Rotten and Sid Vicious, were shaking the foundations of the established rock scene, and their disdain for the Stones was palpable. The clash between the two bands wasn't just musical. It was a battle of ideologies, as each group represented a different vision of rock and roll. Despite the Pistols' punk ethos, the Stones, with their long-established status as rock icons, weren't overly impressed. During an interview in 1977, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards made it clear that they didn't view punk as the revolution it claimed to be. They dismissed the movement as a fleeting trend, with Jagger notably remarking that the punks were just like the Stones in their early years, young people with little else to do but form rock bands. While the Pistols were busy attacking the commercial rock scene, the Stones, in their typical defiant manner, fired back with a blend of humor and sharp words, suggesting that the punks were simply copying the older generation's rebelliousness without truly understanding it. The rivalry was further fueled by Sid Vicious's comments about the Stones, particularly his assertion that the band should have quit in 1965. This was just one of the many insults thrown by the Sex Pistols toward rock's older guard. The Stones, however, were unbothered by these provocations. Instead of retreating into their own corner, they responded in characteristic Stones fashion, by embracing the punk look and attitude. On their 1978 U.S. tour, Mick Jagger wore a shirt designed by Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne Westwood, the same shirt made famous by Johnny Rotten. This wasn't just a fashion choice, it was a statement. Jagger's move was a clear demonstration that while the Stones may have been far from punk, they could certainly engage in the punk aesthetic, all while continuing to dominate the rock world in their own way. The Sex Pistols' rise was explosive but short-lived. By contrast, the Rolling Stones had already proven themselves as true legends of rock, with decades of chart-topping albums and an enduring cultural influence. Despite the war of words, the Stones' larger-than-life legacy remained secure, their music transcending the trends of punk, while still influencing the very genre that had once tried to tear them down. Ultimately, the rivalry between the Rolling Stones and the Sex Pistols became emblematic of the larger tensions within the rock and roll world during the late 1970s, a time when old and new ideologies collided. The Stones, with their roots firmly planted in the blues-based rock of the past, stood as rock's guardians, while the Sex Pistols, fueled by anger and frustration, sought to tear down the walls of convention. Yet, as history shows, The Stones were the ones who stood the test of time, their influence far outlasting the brief, albeit intense, rise of punk rock. After the release of Some Girls and the infamous Texas show in 1978, the story took a dark turn for Sid Vicious. Just months later, he was arrested for the murder of his girlfriend, Nancy Spungen. The intense public attention surrounding the case temporarily cooled the bitter rivalry between the two bands, and in a surprising move, Mick Jagger stepped in to cover Sid's legal fees. This act of kindness, done without seeking the spotlight, was not lost on Johnny Lydon, Johnny Rotten, who later expressed his gratitude to Jagger. Although Lydon made a few jabs at Jagger in the years that followed, it seems that both the Pistols and the Stones ultimately moved past their differences, shifting their focus back to the music. While the Sex Pistols' run was short, their influence was immense. Formed in 1975, the band, which initially consisted of Johnny Rotten, Paul Cook, Steve Jones, and Glenn Matlock, later replaced by Sid Vicious, ignited a wave of change in the UK music scene. Their single album, Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols, remains a cornerstone of punk rock, with songs like Anarchy in the UK and God Save the Queen becoming anthems for disaffected youth. Despite only lasting a few years, the Pistols' chaotic rise and equally tumultuous fall, with their breakup following a legendary show in 1978, helped lay the foundation for punk rock's lasting legacy. In comparison, the Rolling Stones had already established themselves as rock's reigning kings, unaffected by the punk movement's brief but fiery existence. Despite their initial dismissals of punk, the Stones found ways to adapt, even embracing certain elements of the style while continuing to sell out arenas and maintain their status as rock's most enduring act. Fast forward to today, and it's clear that both bands have survived well beyond their respective moments in history. Mick Jagger and Johnny Lydon may never sit down for tea, but they found a way to coexist within the music world, both continuing to tour globally and influence new generations of fans. Their rivalry, once marked by bitterness and confrontation, now feels like part of rock and roll's mythos, a reminder of how the genre has always been and continues to be a space for both innovation and tension. While a diss track from either side might still be fun to imagine, it's clear that the legacy of both bands, punks and rockers alike, has far surpassed their momentary conflicts. The Stranglers. Mick Jagger's disdain for the Stranglers can be traced back to 1977, when he publicly criticized the band, calling their music hideous and rubbishy. His comments were part of a broader pattern of candid critiques Jagger made about other bands during that era. Despite not providing specific reasons for his harsh assessment, the criticism didn't hinder the Stranglers' success. In fact, the band thrived on their outsider status, with Jean-Jacques Brunel, their bassist, commenting that they thrived on being disliked. Their provocative lyrics and confrontational image made them a controversial yet influential part of the punk scene. The Stranglers formed in 1974 in Guildford, Surrey, and are one of the longest surviving bands from the UK punk scene. While they were initially identified with punk rock, their music transcended genres, moving through new wave, art rock, gothic rock, and even sophisti-pop during the 1980s. Their 1982 hit Golden Brown is one of their most famous tracks, alongside others like No More Heroes, Peaches, Always the Sun, Skin Deep, and Big Thing Coming. The Stranglers' early sound was defined by Jean-Jacques Brunel's melodic bass and Dave Greenfield's keyboards, as well as the growling vocals and sometimes misanthropic lyrics of Brunel and Hugh Cornwell. Over time, their music evolved into a more refined and sophisticated style. Critic Dave Thompson summarized their contribution to music by noting that while their music may have been crude and ugly at times, it was never boring. Throughout their career, the band underwent several lineup changes. After Hugh Cornwell's departure in 1990, Brunel, drummer Jet Black and Greenfield remained as the core members. However, Jet Black retired in 2018 and Dave Greenfield passed away in 2020, marking a significant chapter in the band's long history. Despite these changes, the Stranglers remain an influential force in the punk and new wave scenes. What name on this list shocked you, and do you think Mick Jagger's reason for disliking these bands is valid? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click on the next video that pops up. You won't want to miss it.